From our Toronto studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Aylia Batool. Trump makes normalizing relations with Israel condition for U.S.-Saudi nuclear deal. This and more on today's show, so stay tuned. The House has passed a major defense bill that deepens U.S. military cooperation with Israel. The legislation includes a controversial provision called Section 219. It creates a new U.S.-Israel Defense Technology Cooperation Initiative. The measure calls for closer cooperation in weapons research, testing, and military technology. It also covers artificial intelligence, missile defense, cybersecurity, quantum technology, and joint weapons production. Republican Congressman Thomas Macy strongly opposed the measure. He said it would merge America's military and defense supply chains with Israel. Macy called it a betrayal of U.S. sovereignty. He urged the Senate to reject the provision. Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna also opposed the plan. Several senators, led by Bernie Sanders, have raised similar concerns in the Senate. Supporters claim the initiative will strengthen U.S. military capabilities and speed up the development of advanced defense technologies. The bill is not yet law. The Senate must still pass its own version. Both chambers must then agree on a final text before it can be sent to President Donald Trump for approval. Iran launched fresh missile and drone attacks across the region after the U.S. carried out its 12th consecutive night of strikes inside Iran. Jordan's army says it intercepted 3 Iranian missiles early Thursday. One missile landed in an unpopulated area. Iranian state media say a U.S. strike on the Shamalcha border crossing with Iraq killed at least 2 people and wounded 11 others. Explosions were reported in the southeastern city of Konarak. Bahrain and Kuwait also reported Iranian missile and drone attacks. Iran says it targeted U.S. military facilities in Kuwait, including Camp Doha, Ali al-Salim Air Base, and Camp Arifjan, using destructive drones. President Donald Trump threatened that Iran would be held responsible for any future Houthi attacks from Yemen. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio claims that Iran is begging for a deal but is not ready to honor one. Meanwhile, Iraqi Prime Minister Ali al-Zaidi held talks with Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian in Iran's capital, Tehran. He arrived there soon after he completed his visit to Washington. Oman also urged all sides to avoid further escalation. Omani Foreign Ministry said they are working with regional partners and the UN to revive peace efforts. President Donald Trump has added a condition to the U.S.-Saudi civilian nuclear agreement just one day after it was announced. Trump says the deal will move forward only if Saudi Arabia joins the Abraham Accords and normalizes relations with Israel. In a Truth Social post, Trump insisted there will be no enrichment of nuclear material under the agreement. That appears to differ from details released by the U.S. Energy Department, which announced the deal without linking it to the Abraham Accords. The agreement, signed on Wednesday, establishes the legal framework for peaceful nuclear cooperations between Washington and Riyadh. It will now go to the U.S. Congress for a 90-day review. Saudi Arabia has not responded to Trump's latest remarks. The kingdom has repeatedly said it will not recognize Israel until there is a credible path to an independent Palestinian state. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu welcomed Trump's proposal. He called future Saudi recognition of Israel an historic leap forward for peace in the Middle East. Fresh Israeli strikes have hit several parts of Gaza despite the announced ceasefire. Palestinian health officials say 3 more civilians were killed on Thursday. Earlier on Wednesday, Israeli strikes wiped out an entire Palestinian family. Gaza's civil defense accused Israel of committing a crime against humanity over a strike that destroyed the Al-Masri home. Officials say the attack killed both parents and their 4 children aged between 6 and 13 without any prior warning. Israeli warplanes struck a group of civilians near Yemen Al Said Hospital in the Jabalia refugee camp on Thursday. An Israeli drone strike elsewhere in northern Gaza killed at least 1 more person. In Khan Yunis, Israeli military vehicles opened fire on tents sheltering displaced families in the Mawasi area. 2 people were shot inside their tents. Palestinian health authorities say Israeli soldiers have killed 1,185 people and injured 3,816 since the ceasefire was announced on October 10, 2025. As many as 803 bodies have been recovered from the rubble. They say the overall death toll in the Israeli genocide since October 2023 has reached 74,000, with 174,000 people injured. Health officials also report nearly 4,000 miscarriages in Gaza during the first half of this year. They say forced displacement, malnutrition, and the collapse of maternal health care services have led to health crises. The Trump administration is considering possible U.S. military action in Mali. The Washington Post reports that the target is the Al-Qaeda-linked armed group JNIM. However, U.S. officials are divided over the action. Some support military strikes, while others remain cautious. The report says right-wing counterterrorism official Sebastian Gorka is among those backing military action. One U.S. official said Washington is encouraging African governments to buy American defense equipment. The aim is to strengthen their fight against militant groups. The U.S. has urged African partners and NATO allies to support the alliance of Sahel states against JNIM and ISIS. Washington has also blamed Russia for Mali's worsening security. The U.S. designated JNIM a foreign terrorist organization in 2018. The Trump administration has named the daughter of Congresswoman Ilhan Omar in a new report on Cuba targeting left-wing activists. None of the individuals or organizations named has been charged with any crime. The report identifies environmental activist Isra Hirsi. It accuses Hirsi and other left-wing activists of supporting Cuba's government. The report also names political commentator Hassan Piker, labor organizer Christian Smalls, and the Democratic Socialists of America. It claims their visits to Cuba and public advocacy help advance Havana's interests in the United States. The report alleges Cuba-backed nonprofits, academic partnerships, and travel groups help coordinate these activities. The report comes as Secretary of State Marco Rubio expands U.S. pressure on Cuba through tougher sanctions and economic restrictions. Investigation underway after Islamophobic threat against Delaware County Sheriff. Details coming up next. Authorities are investigating a racist and Islamophobic threat against Delaware County Sheriff Siddiq Gamera. Officials say the sheriff received an anonymous voicemail over the weekend on his official office phone line. The message contains graphic threats of violence and hateful language directed at Gamera. The Delaware County Criminal Investigation Division is leading the investigation. No arrests have been announced. The Delaware County Council strongly condemned the threat. County leaders said violence, racism, and religious hatred have no place in the community. Gamera said the threat has only strengthened his resolve to serve the people of Delaware County. He stressed that public officials should expect criticism and accountability. But he said threats of violence crossed the line into criminal conduct. Authorities say the investigation remains active as detectives work to identify the caller. A Texas city known for its diversity is confronting growing religious tensions. Frisco's Muslim, Hindu, and Jain communities say they are facing increasing hostility over plans to build new places of worship. Muslim resident Gul Jannat says her family moved to Frisco nearly a decade ago for good schools and opportunity. But she says they have recently experienced profiling and discrimination they had never faced before. The controversy erupted after heated city council meetings over plans for a second mosque, a new Hindu temple, and the city's first Jain temple. Observers say unfounded fears about Sharia law and immigration were raised. Community leaders rejected those claims, saying the project simply meet the need of Frisco's growing population. Experts warn that anti-immigrant rhetoric from some political figures and activist groups has fueled local tensions. Despite the backlash, city officials have allowed all three projects to move forward. Newly elected Mayor Mark Hill has pledged to keep Frisco welcoming to everyone. Supporters have also gathered outside local mosques carrying signs of solidarity and ensuring Muslim families they remain valued members of the community. The director of America's National Museum of American History has defended the Smithsonian against accusations of political bias. Speaking before a U.S. House Committee, Director Anthea Hartig rejected Republican claims that the museum promotes a left-wing view of history. She invited lawmakers to tour the museum and judge its exhibits firsthand. Hartig said the institution presents America's full story. She said that includes the nation's greatest achievement and its most painful chapters. Republican lawmakers claim the museum downplays America's founding ideals and presents history through the ideological lens. Their criticism followed a White House report ordered by President Donald Trump. It accuses the Smithsonian of replacing a shared national story with politically driven narratives. Democrats defended the museum. They accused the Trump administration of trying to shape how American history is taught in museums and other public institutions. Analysts say the debate reflects a wider cultural and political divide in the U.S. over how the nation's past should be presented to future generations. After the Strait of Hormuz, shipping is now facing fresh disruptions in the Red Sea. Yemen's Houthi movement says it has struck 2 Saudi oil tankers with missiles and drones. The group identified the vessels as the Aylia and the Aylia. The Houthis say their tankers violated their recently announced blockade on Saudi ports. They insist the blockade will remain in place until Saudi Arabia lifts restrictions on Yemeni ports and airports. Maritime security reports say 1 tanker was attacked north of Yemen after departing the Saudi port of Yanbu. The incident has disrupted traffic through the Bab al-Mandab Strait. Ship tracking data shows at least 7 commercial vessels have changed course. The number of ships using the strategic waterway has fallen sharply. The European Union Naval Force has warned commercial vessels linked to the U.S., Israel, and Saudi Arabia to exercise extreme caution in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. The latest attacks have raised fresh concerns over global energy supplies and the security of one of the world's busiest shipping routes. India's youth-led cockroach movement is gathering momentum. Organizers have now given a nationwide call for protests on Friday after Monday's massive mobilization brought parts of the capital, New Delhi, to a standstill. With each passing day, larger crowds are joining the anti-corruption sit-in. The movement, led by youth, has renewed their demand for the resignation of Education Minister Dharmendra Pradhan over repeated exam paper leaks. The movement began after a Supreme Court judge compared unemployed youth to cockroaches. Students embraced the label as a symbol of resilience and launched a campaign that quickly spread across social media. What started as an online satire has become one of the biggest youth-led protest movements in recent years. Protesters accuse the government of failing to protect the integrity of competitive examinations. They are demanding sweeping reforms in the education and recruitment systems. Police used tear gas and batons to disperse demonstrators during Monday's march to Parliament. Authorities say 60 protesters and 118 police personnel were injured in the clashes. The movement has now drawn support from opposition parties, activists, and professionals. It is turning a student campaign into a broader challenge to Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government. Organizers say Friday's nationwide agitation will continue until their demands are met. Heavy rain has unleashed deadly floods and landslides across Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. At least 26 people have been killed. Several others were injured. Rescue teams are continuing search and relief operations in the worst-hit areas. More than 20 of the victims died in the border districts of Poonch and Rajouri. Flash floods swept through villages after days of relentless rainfall. 2 more people were killed when a massive boulder struck a passenger vehicle on the Jammu-Srinagar National Highway. 5 others were injured. In a separate incident, a young boy was swept away by floodwaters and died in Bandipora district. The Jammu-Srinagar highway has been closed after landslides and falling rocks made several stretches unsafe. In Ladakh's Kargil district, flash floods damaged homes, roads, and public infrastructure. The region's capital, Srinagar, and several other towns remain waterlogged. Weather officials have warned of more heavy rain, with fresh risks of flash floods and landslides. Authorities are urging residents and tourists to avoid river, streams, and vulnerable mountain slopes. That's all from our Toronto studios. Thank you for watching Muslim News. We are a community channel dedicated to bringing you stories you can trust. Please like, share, and subscribe to our content. You can also comment to let us know what you think of our coverage. You can donate now by visiting muslimnetwork.tv/donate. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV. Salam.